Hey folks, welcome to Pokémon HeartGold vs. Crystal. This is going to be an interesting little experiment, both as a learning experience for me and a demonstration, hopefully, and maybe it'll even end up entertaining. Now I'm going to explore and explain the premise of this proposition while Professor Oak introduces us to the game. The idea here, rather than just show off the obvious differences between these two games with the improved graphics, improved music, slightly different designs for routes, slightly different dialogue, slightly different teams, rather than demonstrate things like that, which you can pretty much observe but just by playing through the game, the intention here is to play through both Crystal and HeartGold using the same Pokémon team. And this should demonstrate the various differences in challenge that are introduced through the mechanical additions to the combat between the second and fourth generations. There's things like the physical special split introduced in Generation 4, differences in move pool, move availability, natures, and abilities. All those should make things interesting. And hopefully, you will see two very, very different play styles between the two versions, despite using the same team. I haven't completed it yet, but I've already encountered a number of rather interesting things that occurred, so hopefully it'll be neat. Now, majority of the footage will be from HeartGold, because it does look like aesthetically more pleasing, and you will see Crystal more so in challenging fights and whatnot. Anyway, that takes care of introductions. Let's go to the world of Pokémon. Now we start out in our house, as usual, here in New Bark Town. Now, I'm willing to bet that a majority of you have played a second-generation game, a Johto game, in one way, shape, or form. Because I know most of the people watching these are of around the same age as me, and probably played Gold, Silver, and Crystal when they came out on the Game Boy Color. And even you younger viewers have probably played HeartGold and Soul Silver. So I would expect that you're all familiar with this and don't need me to kind of walk you through what's happening in the plot, etc. But let me just talk a little bit about this introduction to the menu system, which is totally based around the bottom screen, so it's all magically happening off screen while you're watching Mom talk. Basically, every option is instantly accessed rather than through a start menu by pressing buttons on the bottom screen via the touchscreen, which is so nice. Such a great system for interacting with things. And unfortunately, because HeartGold and Soul Silver were developed at the same time as Black and White, rather than sharing ideas, they were more or less exclusive. This menu system is not carried over to the 5th generation. That is unfortunate, because it is the most convenient menu system ever. Love just touchscreen controls. Really good for menus. Anyway, new introduction to the remakes is this character Lyra. She replaces Chris, who was the original female protagonist, and that upset a good number of people. I would have accepted it a little better if she had better fashion sense. Because, look, Gold is frickin' really stylish, or Ethan, I guess, is his canon name. God, I hate Lyra's hat, I guess. Chris was really stylish. Anyway, another introduction to the remakes is this idea of Pokemon walking outside their Pokeballs and following you, which we'll get into a little bit once we actually have our first Pokemon. But now we got Gold Acquaintance Mr. Pokemon. And an interesting little subversion from the originals. We have to, now that eggs are commonplace and we know about them from previous games in the series, eggs are now no longer revolutionary, so some of the dialogue had to change in order to fit that. Anyway, we're choosing Chikorita as our starter. And as you can see, it's outside the Pokeball, following us a lot like in Pokemon Yellow. This was a neat little thing that, again, was not carried over to the 5th generation, and many people missed it. Anyway, I chose Chikorita, but Chikorita will not be a permanent member of our team. Because, one, I've already used a Chikorita in my Pokemon Coliseum playthrough, but also because choosing Chikorita as my starter and then ditching it has kind of become a tradition for every time I play through a Johto game for YouTube. So, yeah, you know, alright, I'll roll with tradition. Anyway, he'll give you several potions. He originally only gave you 1, but I think he gives you like 5 now. It's ridiculous. Hello, Lyra. Lyra's like childhood friend or something, I don't know. Now, Lyra's kind of, like, really lame. She's basically introduced as a new character, but they don't do anything with her. She's there to serve as a tutorial early in the game, and then just doesn't do anything. Like, ever. You don't fight her at all. Anyway, we can't leave till we talk to Mom and get our Pokegear. Originally, Pokegear was given to you as soon as you came downstairs, but that was replaced with introducing the menu system, and that would probably be too much information at once to introduce all that. Yay, repair shop. Don't know where the repair shop is in this wild and crazy world. And the much-remembered phone call system. Everyone loved the phone call system as a way of rebattling trainers, even though, on a technical level, it kind of sucked. It was unreliable. It was very hard to actually get rematches with anybody. Versus Seeker from Fire and Leaf Green is pretty much the best thing anyone has come up with, but everyone wanted the phone, you know? This phone is hip and modern and cool and new. We won't be using the phone much in this playthrough, just because there isn't a whole lot of interest. Anyway, on to Route 29. Now, for this first episode, and for most episodes, I will be editing out nearly every wild Pokemon encounter. So if you hear the music kind of disrupt a little bit, or I stand in place for a second, that's probably me editing out a wild Pokemon. Because really there isn't a whole lot of interest in me fighting random wild Pokemon. They take far too long to be actually, like, interesting for the viewer. And this first episode especially will not have a whole lot of combat in it. So far, sorry for you combat junkies, but I really wanted to get all this tutorial business out of the way. We'll be catching our first permanent team member at the end of the episode, though, so you can look forward to that. Anyway, here's the thing, Apra Corns trees. In the original games, those trees were almost exclusively berry trees, and then occasionally you would find an apricorn tree. Now they're pretty much all apricorns. And we'll learn what apricorns are in a few episodes. Anyway, this guy, the Guide Gent, he's received a little bit of a makeover for the remake. Originally, he was super peppy and no, he was just a random old guy, but now he's super peppy, and he, like, runs around, and I don't know, he is a character now, I guess. It wasn't entirely necessary, but oh well. Now, you may be noticing all those black specks on the ground. I apologize, that's a byproduct of emulation. There are basically two options. Have black specks on the ground, or have Ethan there just always distorted and stretched and weird looking. And I'd rather have Ethan look normal. Anyway, he will give you the running shoes as well as a town map. And running shoes in this game are great because there's a little button on the bottom screen that you just press once and then you're just always running. You don't have to hold down a button. It is amazing and so good and so perfect. I wish you were just always running in all the games ever, but unfortunately it's very hard to go back to older games. Like, you know, it was hard to go back to first and second generation games because they didn't have running shoes once you played third generation. Now it's hard for me to play any game with running shoes that doesn't have it automatically just running. Anyway, look at this old guy. He originally gave you a berry and talked to you about berries, how berries are super cool. But now he'll talk to you about Apra Corns, and Apra Corns are super cool. Basically, they're like acorns of sorts, and eventually they can be forged into Pokeballs of various sorts. Depending on the color, they'll have different superpowers, and it's cool, and it's... aside from one or two, it's generally not very useful. Anyway, we are on our way to Mr. Pokemon's house. The left path there is blocked, so we'll head up right. And... oh yeah, a little note. Wild Pokemon appear more frequently when you're running rather than when you're walking. So sometimes, if I'm feeling like I'm getting assaulted a lot, I'll stop running for a little bit, and usually it'll clear up. Soon I'll get repels, though, and that'll be a lot nicer. Anyway, this is Mr. Pokemon. Doesn't even deserve a unique sprite. And it's a mystery egg. Originally, the mystery egg was like a big deal because Pokemon eggs were not a thing that we knew existed. Unless you watched the anime, in which case the mystery was cleared up almost immediately. But now eggs are pretty much commonplace. And really, we've already seen a Pokemon inside many times before, so it's like, not nearly as big a deal. Anyway, this is Professor Oak. I do like that Professor Oak is actually held in high esteem here. He's not just this professor from another region. He's like actually well respected by a lot of people internationally. And I think they also do that a bit in 4th generation proper, the Sinnoh games. But I'll always be partial here, kind of, because it does feel like a true sequel, continuation. Because we have some of these returning characters. Anyway, now that we've gotten the egg here, we can head out after this commercial break. Alrighty, out of Mr. Pokemon's house with the mystery egg in hand, but all of a sudden things have gotten real. Professor Elm has a problem. What is your problem, Professor Elm? Tell me of your woes. There's a disaster. Do I even need to put up a facade of not knowing what's gonna happen? Like, honestly, everyone's played this? No, well. Anyway, Professor Elm wants us to get back, as if we weren't going to go back already. And now it's just a matter of getting back to New Barktown. Now watch this a little bit very carefully. I had a 1/5 of a second clip right there, because I encountered 2 wild Pokemon in such close proximity to each other. Yeah, it's a good thing that I'm editing wild Pokemon out. Anyway, head back to New Barktown, but who should appear but that guy who was looking in on Professor Elm's lab. Remember, he was in the background. I didn't talk to him. Anyway, this guy, fan term for him is Silver. That's his manga name. And he actually got a little redesign in HeartGold and Soul Silver. He has a little spike on his head, in his hair now. I think it's nice. It provides a little dynamic thing now. Before, he was a little too much like Trunks, I don't know. Anyway, he tends to be like one of the easiest rival fights in the series, this early one, because you have as much time as you want to grind levels before fighting this guy. I've gone up to like level 11 just to make sure I'm prepared. He's never really an issue, basically. Anyway, Chikorita got Poison Powder, got Raisin Leaf. Chikorita has actually become rather significant and powerful in all these fights that you haven't seen. Anyway, first little glimpse into Crystal. Once again, not a whole lot. See, there's different hair. I like his new hair, personally. Not a whole lot different, because, again, level 5 starter, and you can be drastically over-leveled, but you can tell by Chikorita's level here how less frequent wild battles are in the originals compared to the remakes. Because Chikorita's gotten a lot less experience just from fighting things. Because I'm pretty sure I was fighting, like, basically everything I ran into. Now, part of that is that the maps are smaller here, there are fewer squares, fewer opportunities to run into wild Pokemon. But I do think that the encounter rate is actually significantly lower. But like pretty much every early rival fight, it's just mash the only attack that you have, and you'll take it down. No strategy here. Barely even needs the comparison. Next fight's gonna be a lot more interesting, I swear, but I think this is the only combat in this episode, other than catching the first permanent team member. So, yeah. Anyway, he does not tell you his name. In the original games, he would say, "My name is question mark, question mark, question mark," and people took that to be his actual name. Here, he apparently drops his trainer card, and you supposedly read it. You still come up with his name later on. Anyway, like most first routes, you can get back to the town in reverse without encountering any wild Pokemon. They're all designed like that, it's very convenient. Alright, Professor Elm, what's the scoop? What's going on here? So yeah, guess what? Silver stole the Pokemon. It's amazing, it's true. I don't know what Professor Elm was doing that he didn't, like, notice. Anyway, I wasn't sure what I wanted to call this guy, so I went for the classic. Now, of course, it would be awkward to call him question mark, question mark, question mark every time, so I'll just call him the Question. Now, it's worth noting that I will maintain consistency between the two versions whenever possible, with names and nicknames. Pokemon will be named the same thing, the Question has the same name, I have the same name. It's more or less the same, just for the sake of minimum confusion. So that way, when I know I'm talking about the Question, you know I'm talking about the Question, but you don't know which version I'm talking about, of course. Anyway, eggs, less amazing than before. Now, this is still amazing. Because Professor Oak, originally he gave Pokedex because he was lazy and old and wanted us to fulfill his dreams and live vicariously. Now he's just, like, giving them to kids, I don't know. Anyway, we're gonna take on the gym challenge. Because I think at this point they knew that people didn't really care about catching them all anymore, most of the population. So the focus is more on the gym challenge. Anyways, the money saving system. Generally, money isn't too tight in this game. You don't need to have her save some for fear of ever being totally run out, but it is nice to come back at the end of the game and find a couple 10,000 Poké Dollars waiting for you. Anyway, here's a mandatory tutorial on how to catch Pokemon. In the original games, this was optional. The guy would come up to you and ask, "Hey, do you want to learn how to catch Pokemon?" And you can be like, "No, dude, I got it." And Lyra, of course, because she represents the new direction that Nintendo is taking to comfort casual gamers, the stupid slug people that they are. It's a mandatory tutorial. God for frickin' bid. Anyway, for those of you who have not played a Pokemon game or read any sort of Pokemon, like, novelization or comic, or have not seen the show, and somehow through the past, 15 years, absorbed this basic bit of information through cultural osmosis, weaken a Pokemon, and then throw a Pokeball at it. And if you're lucky, gotcha. You'll get it. And you can then dominate its mind and use it to kill various wildlife. And there, 5 Pokeballs. Pokeballs are the basic Pokeball, as you might expect. Anyway, now let's head to Cherry Grove, and pretty darn soon, as you can see it's nearing the end of the episode, pretty darn soon, we will encounter our first teammate, our first permanent teammate. I should get this Apra Corn. I don't know how it's pronounced. It will be an eternal struggle with learning how to pronounce things. Anyway, here in Cherry Grove, gonna heal a little bit. And now it is nighttime, and that means we have access to our first team member. And our first team member is Spinarak. Spinarak is a bug poison type, which you probably wouldn't expect much capability from, considering it's an early game bug, and bugs generally aren't that good to begin with. It doesn't have a whole lot of strong offensive capabilities, its stats aren't much to say. On the other hand, it's really, really cool, and its evolution is even cooler. And I don't think I've ever actually used one throughout an entire playthrough as a dedicated team member. So, it will be on board for the time being. And for the time being, I mean, like, the entire game. Again, I don't know how its usefulness may vary between the two versions, but hey, we'll see. Gotcha. Spinarak's got. See, it's a friggin' badass is what it is. Oh, it's like a 20-pound spider. Anyway, coming up with nicknames. My live stream chat actually helped me came up with several of the nicknames that I'll be using in this run. This one included. You may already see where this is going. Now, minor disclaimer, I have Webster in all caps here, but for future nicknames on the HeartGold file, I will be using proper sentence case, and I will be adjusting Webster to fit that once I reach Goldenrod, and I'll be using all caps here in Crystal. Now, part of the tenet here is that I need to be able to obtain the Pokemon that I'm using at the same time between the two versions, so even if they're both available technically, I need to get them at the same time. Now, minor differences in starting level and IVs and whatnot will cause minor fluctuations in usefulness, and then natures will also cause differences in HeartGold and Soul Silver, but overall, I'm keeping things fairly similar. Gotcha. Spinarak was caught once again. And as you can see, we are nearing the end of the episode. So let's head back to the Cherry Grove Pokemon Center, and I will see you guys next time for the Trek to Violet.